The movie begins with a tow truck driver, Gary, arriving at the residence of Maddie Barker to retrieve her vehicle. Maddie emerges and attempts to sway Gary's emotions, having had a prior relationship until she abruptly cut ties. Her attempts are thwarted by another man she had a liaison with the night before, emerging in his undergarments and fondling her. Gary confiscates the car despite Maddie's objections, knowing she works as an Uber driver. Maddie skates to catch up to Gary and halts when he attempts to purchase breakfast at a nearby diner. She attempts to reduce the vehicle and depart, but the car remains attached to the truck, so she awkwardly endeavors to extract it until Gary elevates the car again. Maddie ultimately gets apprehended and placed on probation due to her deeds, and she's also informed that she owes a substantial amount in overdue taxes, putting her house at risk of forfeiture. Maddie also toils as a bartender at a waterfront establishment in Montauk, New York, where she has resided all her life. Maddie is remarked upon by her employer for displaying an attitude when she engages in a dispute with a patron who attempts to purchase a beverage before the bar is officially open. She collaborates with her closest companion Sarah and socializes with her and her spouse Jim. During their intermission, Sarah presents Maddie with a job advertisement from an affluent family seeking someone to court their son prior to his departure for college, and as compensation, they are offering a Buick Regal. Maddie comprehends that court implies intimacy, but elects to comply because she lacks alternative choices and aims to take advantage of the wealthy family since they are seizing her home. The following day, Maddie glides on roller skates along a street and reaches the residence of the Becker family and encounters the parents, Laird and Allison. They converse about their adolescent son, Percy, who is scheduled to attend Princeton in the autumn, but is exceedingly socially inept and reserved with minimal acquaintances. He spends his time secluded in his chamber, engrossed in video games. Although they anticipated someone nearer to Percy's age, Maddie is 32, Percy is 19, Maddie persuades them that she is the suitable woman for the task. Nevertheless, Laird and Allison inform Maddie that Percy must not be informed of their agreement. Laird and Allison instruct Maddie to locate Percy, laboring at a canine shelter. She dons a snug attire to endeavor to allure him and feigns interest in adopting a dog. Percy introduces her to a former police dog named Milo, discharged from duty due to developing an addiction to cocaine. Percy starts to feel uneasy as Maddie advances aggressively and attempts to depart prematurely, but Maddie proposes to chauffeur him home after borrowing Jim's van. Upon reaching her residence, Percy retrieves a container of pepper spray and spritzes her in the face. Following Maddie's painful explanation that she simply found him appealing, Percy expresses his desire for a formal rendezvous, to which Maddie assents. Later, Maddie returns the van to Jim and Sarah, informing them that Percy is unfuckable. That night, Maddie escorts Percy to a tavern where she is acquainted with the server and orders him a Long Island iced tea, which he detests. A man named Travis appears, as he evidently dated Maddie previously. He displays his wedding band and mentions that Maddie leaving him was the greatest event that occurred to him, cautioning Percy not to form an emotional bond with her. Afterwards, Maddie accompanies Percy to the shore for a nude swimming session. Despite his hesitation, Maddie persuades him to join her. Moments later, 3 inebriated adolescents appear and snatch their garments, which contain their wallets, phones, and keys. Consequently, Maddie emerges from the water entirely unclothed and engages in a physical altercation with all 3 adolescents, 2 males and a female, before they yield and return their belongings. Subsequently re-entering the water, Percy is unsettled by her forceful encounter with the teenagers and informs her that something is amiss. Maddie exits the water, dresses, heads to her car to start it and depart, but Percy is still undressed and demands his phone back. Refusing to return it, he climbs onto the front of her car, and she proceeds to drive with him clinging on, completely unclothed. Law enforcement officers spot them and give chase, but Maddie fears the loss of her license if caught, so she accelerates and manages to cross train tracks before a train arrives, evading the pursuing officers. Maddie brings Percy back to her house in another attempt to seduce him. She tries to do a sexy move for him, and then has him attempt to do the same until she sees a rash on his back, which he traits to uneasiness. Maddie applies moisturizer to his back as he begins to open up about his history, counting the truth that his classmates made fun of him for resting in his parents' room and spreading rumors that he was having sex with them, which is why he doesn't like to go out. Maddie, too, opens up around an humiliating memory to Percy. The following day, an ex-schoolmate named Doug Kahn appears at Maddie's residence, as he is currently a real estate agent and intends to vend her house at the complete cost. Maddie declines his offer, as she still intends to preserve the house. Percy invites Maddie to spend the day together for a genuine rendezvous, to which she agrees. They visit an amusement arcade and claim prizes before being expelled because Maddie was meddling with another child. They visit the Beacon, where Percy asks Maddie to smooch her, and she consents, although he is somewhat clumsy about it. She also discusses with him how she never departed Montauk and has resided in the same residence as her mother because her father bestowed it upon them, along with some funds, so that they wouldn't inconvenience him and his new family. They subsequently go to rendezvous with Percy's previous caregiver, an adult man named Jody. He suspects something is amiss with Maddie, though she retorts that he is unsettling for being a male nanny to a teenage boy. Later, Maddie and Percy head to dine at an upscale eatery for a small promenade since they both missed their proms. She urges him to showcase his piano skills after he mentions his ability, so he steps forward and performs the tune Man Eater for the entire restaurant, eliciting cheers and applause. Maddie is equally impressed. A peer from Percy's school, Natalie, then approaches to commend him, mentioning she's also headed to Princeton in the autumn. Natalie invites Percy to a gathering for other Princeton-bound students, although Maddie attempts to dissuade him due to her concern that he might engage romantically with Natalie or another girl. Despite Maddie's reservations, Percy insists on attending. The pair take a limo to the gathering, and Maddie searches for Percy, navigating through haughty adolescents who believe she is too mature to be there. Eventually, Maddie locates Percy in bed with Natalie, but he's unwell from drinking and consuming an ibuprofen. She assists him in inducing vomiting until the hosts of the party intervene and instruct Maddie to depart. Percy attempts to defend her and inadvertently ends up striking Maddie in the throat. Following their departure, Percy expresses his readiness for intimacy with Maddie in the limo, but after professing his love for her, she realizes he's excessively inebriated and declines to proceed. Laird and Allison observe that Percy appears more cheerful and outgoing, which he attributes to his new girlfriend. However, Percy informs them that he's no longer planning to attend Princeton because he wants to remain near Maddie. Allison contacts Maddie, who is starting to reconsider the job. Laird assures her that she can have the vehicle without sustaining the relationship to prevent Percy from avoiding Princeton. Regrettably, Percy is in his parents' automobile and starts it, triggering the speakers, allowing him to eavesdrop on their conversation. He hears Maddie expressing her desire for the car without needing an intimate relationship with Percy, leaving him devastated. Percy then invites Maddie over for lunch to encounter his parents. He begins imbibing their wine and starts behaving indirectly hostilely before heading out with his colleague Crispin to take the Buick into the woods to tamper with it. They hurl a stone onto the accelerator and cause it to collide into a tree, which collapses onto the car. Upon Percy's return to the house, he and Maddie then opt to engage in intercourse and conclude it swiftly, but before he can even penetrate her, he ends up ejaculating on her thigh. He asserts his awareness of everything and expresses his desire to cease seeing Maddie, remarking that she'll eventually reside in Montauk for the remainder of her life. Gary subsequently delivers Maddie the damaged Buick, as her name is listed on the documents. She is compelled to persist in her Uber responsibilities in her disordered vehicle, while Percy resumes residing in his chamber, engrossed in video games. Moreover, he refrains from responding to any of Maddie's messages or phone calls. Following Maddie's eventual accumulation of adequate funds to repair her car and settle her taxes, she commemorates with Jim and Sarah. However, they disclose to her their decision to relocate to Florida due to their impending parenthood Sarah is expecting. Maddie is left distressed, realizing that she will be entirely on her own. Maddie subsequently reaches out to Doug and opts to accept his proposal to vend her residence. She vends it to Jim and Sarah so they can reside and rear their infant there, and she is formulating arrangements to relocate to California. Maddie discovers Percy is at a Princeton gathering and seeks to locate him. He continues to decline communication with her, even as she attempts to justify herself. She leaps onto the bonnet of his car, as he previously did to her, and he speeds away with her clinging on. They wind up driving along a shoreline where Maddie ignites from a barbecue grill before Percy plunges into the water. He frets and searches for Maddie before they tearfully apologize to one another. Following their reconciliation, Maddie mentions she is relocating to California, and Percy expresses his joy for her. He also asserts that it still holds true that he surrendered his virginity to her, despite evidence to the contrary. Percy bundles his luggage and bids adieu to Laird and Allison on the day he is scheduled to depart for Princeton. Maddie arrives to transport him there before she heads to California and astonishes him by revealing that she embraced Milo.